Hey guys, hope you're well. So we are going to start talking about rate. And specifically in this lesson, we're going to talk about rate when it comes to petrol questions. You know, like when they talk about a car that has a certain kilometers per liter and how far can they drive. Then we're going to look at questions with distance, speed, and time. Then we're going to look at some interesting mixed questions, which has like random things that you'll see. And then we're going to look at exchange rate. Okay, so let's get started. So petrol questions, let's quickly talk about how these ones work. So if you have a car, now I'm terrible at drawing cars, so I'm just going to draw a box. Wow, that's just terrible. And there's a wheel. Okay, so there's your car, right? Now all cars have a, assuming it's a normal petrol car or diesel, whatever, we have a tank. We have a petrol tank. And that tank has a certain size, which we call the liters, okay? So maybe it has a 40 liter tank. Now, when the car is busy driving, it's going to be using petrol, obviously. Now, depending on the type of car, it will use different amounts of petrol. So, for example, if you have a big like 4x4, that's going to use more petrol compared with a smaller vehicle, a smaller like normal city car, okay? And then if you have like a sports car, that's going to use more petrol compared to if you just have a normal everyday kind of car. So every car uses different amounts of petrol. So for example, if you have a big 4x4, then maybe the petrol consumption will be, they'll maybe say something like, this car can go 8 kilometers per liter, okay? Then maybe you have a small car with a small engine, and then maybe that one can go 20 kilometers per liter. Now just listen to that carefully. The big 4x4 uses a lot of petrol, so it can drive 8 kilometers per liter. So 8 kilometers per liter. What that means is that for every 1 liter of petrol that it uses, think about how big a liter is. You know, like a 2-liter Coke bottle. Now just think of a 1 liter, okay? Now this car can drive 8 kilometers and then it will use 1 liter. Now when you have a smaller car, this car can drive 20 kilometers and it will only use 1 liter. So can you see that this car uses less petrol? Or it can drive further for the same amount of petrol. Can you see that? I hope that makes sense. Pause and rewind and make sure you understand what we've just said over here. It's really important. This big car can only drive 8 kilometers and then it uses 1 liter. This car can drive 20 kilometers and it will only use 1 liter. Okay? So this car uses petrol much faster than this one over here. So here's our first example. Here we have a car that has a fuel consumption of 20 kilometers. Now when they put a line there, it means per. So that means per liter. So this car can drive 20 kilometers and will use 1 liter of petrol. Okay, so that means it can drive, if it drives 40 kilometers, then it will use 2 liters of petrol. If it drives 60 kilometers, then it would use 3 liters of petrol. If it drives 80 kilometers, then it would use 4 liters of petrol. Okay, you understand? It uses 20 kilometers. So when it drives 20 kilometers, you have to picture this in your head. When it drives 20 kilometers, so here it drives 20 kilometers. Think how far that is. That's maybe, I don't know, that's quite a far distance. So 20 kilometers, because I don't know where you live. I was about to use an example of where I live, but I just realized not everyone lives in the same little town as me. So I was going to be like from here to whatever. But 20 kilometers, okay? Now that car would use 1 liter. So then it drives another 20 kilometers. It will use another 1 liter. So you see how it uses 2 liters in 40 kilometers. Okay, and that's what we said. So it says how much petrol will it use if you drive 320 kilometers. So we could just keep adding 20 and 20 and 20 until we get to 320. Or you could just say 320 divided by 20, and that is going to give us 16. So that means it would use 16 liters. Okay, let me show you a different way you could have done that. We know that 20 kilometers goes with 1 liter. Now 320 kilometers goes with X. So whenever you get a situation like this, I want you to use diagonals. So you're going to multiply these two and you're going to multiply these two. So if you multiply 20 with X, you're just going to end up with 20X. And then if you multiply these two, you're going to end up with 320. And then this is now back to normal maths where you need to try and get this by itself. So if you remember our chapter on equations, to get rid of the 20 there, you divide by 20, and what you do to the one side, you do to the other side. And so if that cancels, you end up with X is equal to 16 liters. Now here's a really good question. It says here that the price of petrol is 20 Rand for 1 liter. Okay, so let's just put a little 1 liter bottle. So if you want to buy 1 liter of petrol, it's going to cost you 20 Rand. Okay, Bob's car has a fuel consumption of 15 kilometers per liter. Okay, so when Bob drives 15 kilometers, he would use 1 liter. Okay, so if you just look at those, you can already see some interesting things. To drive 15 kilometers, he will use 1 liter of petrol, and 1 liter of petrol is 20 Rand. So that means for every 15 kilometers that he drives, it's going to cost him 20 Rand. Can you see that? Now, how much money will it cost him to drive 150 kilometers? Well, we know that 15 kilometers is going to cost him 20 Rand. Okay? Does that make sense what we just worked out there? Because 1 liter of petrol is 20 Rand, and he can drive 15 kilometers with 1 liter of petrol. So that means 15 kilometers is going to cost him 20 Rand. So if he now drives 150 kilometers, now we need to work out what will that cost him. So let's just call that X. So here once again you can just multiply those two together. So that'll give you 15X. And then you make that equal to these two multiplied together. Now what is 150 multiplied by 20? 3,000. 3,000. Now to get X by itself, you got to get rid of that 15. You do it on the other side as well. And so that'll be 200 Rand. So that's going to cost him 200 Rand to be able to drive 150 kilometers. This one says that Thando's car can drive 400 kilometers on a 40-liter tank of petrol. Okay, so let's just draw a little picture. So Thando's car can go 400 kilometers, and he has a 40-liter petrol tank. So like in the car, it's got a petrol tank. His petrol tank is 40 liters. Martin's car can drive 480 kilometers. Whoopsie. Let's go straight. 480 kilometers. But he's got a 50-liter tank. So they want to know whose car has a better fuel consumption. So when you have a better fuel consumption, it means that your car uses less petrol to drive. So what we'll do, because you see this one is a 40-liter tank, this one is a 50-liter tank, so we can't really compare them. But what we could maybe do, there's many ways of doing this, but we can say that, okay, so this person, Thando, is a 40-liter, gives you 400 kilometers. Okay, so then if we divide this by 40, and you divide this by 40, then 1 liter will give you, now if you say 400 divided by 40, that'll give you 10. So for 1 liter, Thando's car can go 10 kilometers. Thando. Now for Martin, if we have 480 kilometers, then that gives him, that he gets at 50 liters. So if we get the liters to 1 liter, we can divide by 50 and divide by 50. Then 1 liter, with 1 liter of petrol, Martin's car can drive 9.6 kilometers. 9.6 kilometers. Okay, so if you only put 1 liter of petrol in Thando's car, he can go 10 kilometers. If you put 1 liter of petrol in Martin's car, he can drive 9.6 kilometers. So Thando's car can drive further with 1 liter of petrol. So Thando's car is better with fuel consumption. So the answer here will be Thando. Now we're going to look at distance, speed, and time. Now for this, I want you to just memorize this little triangle over here, okay? So we're going to put a D at the top, S, and then T. that stands for distance, speed, and time. Now, the way that this triangle works is, let's say you want to find distance. So you see distance is at the top. So we can say distance equals, now look at the speed and the time. They're next to each other. When they're next to each other, we're going to multiply. Okay, so that is the first formula that I want you to know. Distance is equal to the speed multiplied by the time. Now, let's look at, let's say you want to find time. So you can say time equals, now have a look at this. The distance is at the top and the speed is at the bottom like that of this line, okay? So we can say time is equal to distance over speed. So that's another formula. And don't worry, we're going to do a few examples where I'll keep helping you to revise this and to remember this. And then if you want to calculate speed, well, if you see speed is over here at the bottom, so you could say speed is equal, and then we have d at the top and t at the bottom, so d over t. Okay, and so these are three formulas that are going to become very useful. So I would not say that you should memorize this. I would say you should rather memorize this and know how this triangle works. So let's just draw our triangle quickly. D, S, T. And okay, so it says that Zieschle drives 300 kilometers. So that is a distance in 3 hours. That is a time. Determine her speed. Okay, so we're looking for speed. So speed is equal, now have a look at this. The distance is at the top and the time is at the bottom. So we can say d over t. So we can then say that speed is equal to, now the distance is 300 and the time is 3 hours. So we're going to get an answer of 100. Now you can't just say 100. You are going to say, now speed, if you look in any car, what is the speed of a car measured in? Kilometers per hour. So this is also going to be kilometers and this was hours. So you're going to say kilometers per hour. So when you say per, you can write it like that with a little line. Okay, so Zieschle is driving at 100 kilometers per hour. It takes Stephen 3 hours, so that's time, to reach his destination when traveling. Now, some learners look at this and they think it's distance. It's not 110 kilometers, it's 110 kilometers per hour. So when they have the line like that, and they have the distance and they have the time, this is actually a speed, okay? It's very important that you remember that. If you look in any car, go look in any car that you can get into and look at the speedometer where it shows you the speed. You'll see that it's measured in km/h. It means kilometers per hour, and that's a speed. If they say kilometers by itself, that's a distance. If they say h, well, that's hours, so that's time. But if they say kilometers per hour, well, that is speed. Okay, that's important. So they want us to, so they've given us the speed and they want us to calculate how far, so distance. So if you go distance, speed, and time, now they want you to calculate distance, which is this one up here. And so distance, now remember that these two are next to each other, so you multiply them like that. And so distance is going to be equal to speed multiplied by time, and that is going to give us 330, and then the unit will be kilometers. Sometimes it's going to be meters or whatever, but here we can see they're using kilometers. This question says, how long will it take me to drive from Cape Town to Durban if the distance, so that's the distance, and I drive at a speed of 110. So they want to know how long, so what is the time? So if you look at the DST triangle, they want us to find time. So time, now if you see what's at the top, we've got a D, and then at the bottom we've got an S, so it's D over S. And so the distance is 1,800, and the speed is 110. And so if you had to work this out, you're going to get 16.36, and then you might wonder, is it minutes, seconds, hours? We'll just look at the other units that they've given, and so that'll be hours. You can say hours like that. This one says that Stephanie takes 80 seconds, okay, that's a time, to run 400 meters, that's a distance. Determine her speed. Okay, so from the DST triangle, we're looking for speed. So speed is equal, now you see the D's at the top and the T's at the bottom, so D over T. And so distance is 400, and time is 80. And so if you had to work this out, you're going to get the speed is equal to 5. Now don't say kilometers per hour. Now it's going to be meters per second. You see, kilometers per hour is when we're using kilometers for distance and hours for time, but now we're using meters for distance and seconds for time. Now we're going to look at mixed questions. Now what do I mean by that? Well, I just mean like basic things like someone can text certain number of words, someone can swim. So I'm just using everyday examples. So when I say mixed, I mean like we're using a mixture of different questions. Okay, it's not a question where we're mixing things together, nothing like that. Okay, so Barbara can text 1,200 words in 20 minutes. So that means in 20 minutes, she can text 1,200 words. Thando can text 900 words in 15 minutes. Who is the faster texter? So you can't just say that it's Barbara because that's longer, or that's a bigger number than this number. You also have to look at Barbara takes 20 minutes, whereas Thando takes 15 minutes. So what you rather do is the following. So here's Barbara. Here's Thando. And what you do is you say 1,200 words, 20 minutes. So what you're going to do is you want to see how many words can Barbara do in 1 minute. So we need to make this become a 1 minute. So we divide by 20. What you do to the one side, you do to the other. So we have 1 minute. And that'll be, if you type this on the calculator, I think that'll be 60 words. So that means Barbara can do 60 words per minute. Okay, now Thando can do 900 words. And that takes 15 minutes. So if you divide by 15... and divide by 15. It's exactly the same. So that means that they are actually exactly the same. They can both type at exactly the same speed. So if Barbara had to go for 15 minutes, she would also only get to 900. And so they actually type at the same exact speed. Amy can swim 12 laps in 8 minutes. Okay, so they're swimming laps, 12 laps in 8 minutes. Martha can swim 20 laps. But that takes 14 minutes. Who's the faster swimmer? So what we'll do is we'll have Amy and Martha. Now, Amy can do 12 laps, and that takes 8 minutes. Martha does 20 laps, and that's 14 minutes. So there's many different ways of doing this, okay? But one of them is... you could try see how long it takes to do 1 lap. So you could try change this to a 1. Or you could actually just change the minutes to a 1, okay? So there's different ways of doing it. So I'm going to divide this by 8, and then this by 8. So that's going to give you 1 minute over here, because the 8 and the 8 cancel. And then 12 divided by 8 is 1.5. So what that means is that Amy, in 1 minute, she can swim 1.5 laps, okay? Now... with Martha, if you divide this by 14 and you divide this side by 14, then in 1 minute, she can do 1.42 laps. So you see, Amy is a faster swimmer because Amy can do 1.5, okay? This number's bigger, and this number is a 4. Some of you might be like, yeah, but this is 42 and this is just a 5. But the way decimals work is if you have a number 1.6781123, and then you have a number that's 1,8, this number is larger. Okay, because if you got to look from the beginning, so look at those two numbers. Which one's bigger? This one. So straight away, this is the bigger number. Okay, so this is a bigger number than this number. So Amy can swim more laps in 1 minute. So in 1 minute, Amy can swim 1.5, whereas Martha can swim 1.42. So Amy is faster. Checkers sells 18 eggs for 36 Rand, whereas Pick n Pay sells 12 for, well, this is supposed to say 4, for 20 Rand. Which shop is cheaper? Okay, so what we do, because you cannot compare them at the moment, because here it's 18 eggs, but here it's 12. And then we've got Pick n Pay. Okay, so Checkers is 18 eggs, and that's going to be 36 Rand. And then Pick n Pay is 12 eggs, and that's going to be 20 Rand. So what we can do is we can go work out the price of 1 egg. So you can divide this by 18, and what you do to the one side, you do to the other side. And so 1 egg, because 18 divided by 18 is 1, is going to be 36 divided by 18, which is 2 Rand. So at Checkers, each egg is 2 Rand. Now at Pick n Pay, if you divide this by 12 and you divide this by 12, then 1 egg, because 12 divided by 12 is 1, then 20 divided by 12 is 1.67. So at Checkers, you are paying 2 rand for 1 egg. At Pick n Pay, you are paying 1 rand 67 per egg. So Pick n Pay is cheaper in this example, because for 1 egg, you're only paying 1 rand 67, whereas at Checkers, you're actually paying 2 rand per egg. So Pick n Pay is cheaper. Here's our next one. Musi scores 450 runs over his last 7 cricket games. Okay, so in total, out of all of his 7 cricket games, he scored 450 runs altogether, whereas James scores 330 runs. So who is the better batsman? Okay, so, and this 450 is not for every single cricket game. I'm saying 450 altogether for the 7 games. Okay, so for Musi, he scores 450 runs when he plays 7 games. For James, he scores 330 runs when he plays 5 games. Okay, so let's see how much Musi scores for 1 game. So we can divide this by 7 and divide this by 7. So in 1 game, Musi will be able to score 64.28 runs. Okay, now I know you can't score 0.28 runs when you're playing cricket, but it's fine, you can just leave it like that because we're just busy comparing quickly. And then let's do the same for this one. So for James, we want to see what can he score in 1 game. So we divide both sides by 5. So in 1 game, he can score 66 runs. So you see, James, on average, scores 66 runs for 1 game, whereas Musi scores 64.28. So they pretty much equal, but if you had to choose strictly who was the better one, you would have to say James, because he did 66 runs per game, whereas Musi does 64.28. Okay, so James would be the better batsman. But in real life, I mean, that is actually so close. They're actually equally good. But if you had to give an answer, you would say this one. Now we're going to look at exchange rates. So, you know, like when you want to change, for example, if you go overseas and you need to change rand into dollars or euros or pounds, well, that is called an exchange rate. For example, if we say that the rand dollar is currently 18 rand per dollar, then think about that. 18 rand. So think about how much that is. 18 rand per dollar. So that means for $1. So that means 18 rand for $1. Okay? So if you arrive in America and you give them 18 rand, they will give you $1. If you give them 36 rand, then they will give you $2, because 36 is double 18. If you give them let's say you give them 54 rand, then they will give you $3. You get it? Okay, so let's go do some examples. The rand dollar exchange is currently 19 rand for $1. How many dollars would you get if you have 5,000 rand? Okay, so 19 rand is going to give you $1. Now, if you have 5,000 rand, well, we need to figure out how many dollars. Now, whenever you have a situation like this, just multiply those two and multiply those two. So 19x equals to 5,000. And then to get the x by itself, you need to get rid of the 19. So you divide by 19 on both sides. And so x would be, so if we round to 2 decimal places, that'll be 263.16 dollars. So for 5,000 rand, that is how many dollars you would receive. You have just gone on holiday to England, and after the holiday you arrive back in South Africa. Okay, so you go overseas where they use to England where they use pounds, and then you've come back and in your wallet you have 62 pounds. Okay, now it says that the current pound exchange rate is 21 rand per pound. So that means for 21 rand you would end up with one, this pound symbol, so difficult for me to draw. I don't know why. Something like that. Okay, I'm just going to say £1, okay? So for 21 rand, it's the same as £1. Now, if you have £62, now we need to figure out how much money would that be? How much rand would that be? Okay, so once again, whenever you have a situation like this, just go multiply those two. So 21 multiplied by 62 equals, and then multiply these two, 1 multiplied by x. And so that's going to be 1,302 equals to x. And so that means you are going to end up with 1,302 rand. So you can go take your £62 to when you get to the airport after arriving from England, there's a place called a currency exchanger. You can give them your £62 and they will give you 1,302 rand, because for every £1 they give you 21 rand, and you've got 62 of those. So here's our last question. It says, you are planning a trip to Italy. You have 16,000 rand spending money, and the current rand-euro exchange is 18 rand per euro. Okay, that's a euro, which is what they use in Italy. How many euros will you get? Okay, so we can see that it's 18 rand for 1 euro. Okay, for 1 euro. Now, So if you have 18 rand, they will give you 1 euro. So if you have 16,000 rand, how many euros would you get? Well, once again, multiply. So 18 multiplied by x is just going to be 18x, and then 16,000 multiplied by 1 is going to give you 16,000. And then to get x alone, you divide by 18, and so x is equal to 888.89. So that's rounded to 2 decimal places, and that would be euros. Okay, and so you would get about 888.89 euros with your 16,000 rand.